Welcome to the WMAR Vault. I'm Jamie Costello. Here at WMAR, we're celebrating 75 years on the air. We were the first TV station in Maryland, and now we're setting our sights on the future and streaming. And to that end, we're mixing the old up with the new, opening up the WMAR Vault and dusting off 16 million feet of archive footage. That's enough to get from Baltimore to LA and still have nearly 400 more miles left over. So we want you to sit back, enjoy as we look back at some of the stories you have witnessed right here on WMAR.
By Stankovic for Baltimore. Stankovic gets around Durant. He's racing in on goal. A crossing pass for Ercole. Ercole scores! McWilliams with Fink. Here comes Fink looking for a fifth. He's got it! They count it down in Baltimore, and a new champion has been crowned in the MISL, the Baltimore Blast. Coach Ken Cooper and assistant coach Dan Count's embrace.
It was a very close game, and I think when they pulled their goalkeeper, the game opened up. But I have a lot of respect for them. They have a great team. They have some of the best American players in the league, and they didn't quit till the end. But we were the better team. We worked very hard, 9 long months of running and kicking and everything else, and that's all worth it.
The key for us was games 3 and 4. We went in there with a definite plan to win 2 games, and we won 2 games. When we came back 3-1, we knew that the emotion of the night would carry us through.
Well, they got the best players in the MISL, and they got Stan and Keith.
I can't believe it. Yeah. Terrific.
It's been a long time coming. I think the Blast are here to stay for a long time. Yeah!
They're the best. They're number one. Number one. Yeah!
The Blast have built a remarkable relationship with their fans. The celebration they had on the floor of the Civic Center Friday night after winning the championship really did include the crowd. And it reminded you of how all along the team has said the fan was important, as the 7th man and as someone whose needs and wishes should be considered. They built fantastic opening scenes for each season to make each game a spectacle that had something for new fans as well as soccer sophisticates. And they hired a master of mass psychology to get everyone involved in the action. They consciously built on pride in Baltimore. When they taped this year's radio commercials, they didn't hire some golden throat from the coast, but some very local lady taking pride in the way we talk.
My name's Debbie, okay? And I work down at Civic Center box office, all right? And I want to tell you about getting tickets to Blast games. You can walk up to the box office right now and get right up in my face and say, I want tickets to every single Blast game, and I'll say, here's your tickets, now get out of my face.
Behind it is the man who's retiring this year, owner Bernie Roden. He gave a goodbye and thank you luncheon for his players and staff today and told why this team, with a sport that was strange and new just 5 years ago, had so quickly become an everyman's event that regularly sells out the Civic Center.
Blast went out in the streets, to the playgrounds, working with the charities. They got themselves involved with every church picnic, every school type of function to raise money, and they became known to everybody. These players, who are a courageous group, get paid the same money as the fellas do at Sparrows Point. Maybe some get a few dollars more. The same money as the people over at GM, or the same as the people at Westinghouse. So they can relate to them. They don't drive a better car. They're not caught up with any sort of a different lifestyle. These are their neighbors. These are people who live in the same homes and have the same worries of meeting their mortgage payments. So they really could take to them.
The Baltimore Blast have been shot out of a spaceship and bounced out of a soccer ball. But tonight, the champions of grand entrances as well as indoor soccer cruised into the inner harbor on board a yacht, and their 3,000 fans loved it.
We realized here a 4-year dream. We set our goals, the players worked, they worked hard, they pulled together at the right time. We had some players that went on to be all-stars in what I consider is going to be an all-star city, believe me.
Tonight's rally was also a going-away party for former owner Bernie Roden, who recently sold the team to businessman Nathan Scher.
Bernie made us champions, and we all love him, and we'll share this memory until our graves.
Roden thanked the fans and promised to help bring other professional sports to Baltimore.
We're going to have not only an NFL team back in this town, we're going to have a National Hockey League team, we're going to have other championships in this city, and once again, Baltimore literally will rule the waves of sports.
The Blast promised the fans they wouldn't settle for just one championship. They were on their way to building a sports dynasty. At the Inner Harbor, Joan Gartland reporting for Nightside.
Thousands of Americans were killed in that attack, and their colleagues who made it through the war met today aboard the Constellation. A ceremony here honored the 107 Pearl Harbor survivors living in Maryland. A proclamation from Mayor Schaefer made this Pearl Harbor Day, and a wreath was thrown from the deck of the ship. That wreath was thrown in memory of the thousands of people who died at Pearl Harbor. For many of the people here today, although it happened 40 years ago, it seems like yesterday.
I was in bed when it started. I was rudely knocked out of bed. And I guess what I remember most is how angry I was. I was scared to death, naturally, and sort of helpless for a while, for about a half hour. But afterwards, we got organized and we came through it.
I had a gun mount in what's called the fantail of the ship, the stern, and we began to shoot. Of course, we couldn't do any good because the guns we had then weren't adequate for any aircraft. The dive bombers were coming down and the shells were going up, and they just didn't meet.
A former Army nurse recalls a sound unlike anything she'd ever heard before.
The only thing I could think of that would be different on the island of Hawaii from any place else that I had never been exposed to was a volcano. And I was working in surgery, and they were calling me to come over to work in surgery. So I started out not being afraid, not really thinking about anything except getting over there fast. But when I got out in the open between the nurses' quarters and the hospital, I suddenly realized there's something up there, that might be falling. And I ran as fast as I could to get under cover.
What many veterans here today say is what they learned from Pearl Harbor is preparation is important. And many of them say they're worried that America isn't prepared should war strike again. I'm Mary Norton, Channel 2 News Scene, The Constellation.
They gathered to honor survivors, men and a ship.
Honor guard, present, boom! Right shoulder, boom!
As the last ship afloat saw active duty in Pearl Harbor, the Coast Guard cutter Tani was given historic landmark status today. Its new mission, to keep alive the memory of that fateful Sunday in Hawaii.
It brings back very sad memories of seeing many men die. Many men would be blown off the side of their ship and swimming through burning oil. I was on the Naval Air Station at Fort Island in the center of Pearl Harbor.
That's what took some of the worst hits.
We took the first bomb of the war. Our seaplanes were almost totally destroyed. I watched while torpedo bombers dropped their torpedoes on the battleships and then circled the other side of the island and dropped their bombs on the other ships.
In the springtime, with its new designation as a National Historic Landmark, the Tawny will be moved a couple hundred yards or so across the harbor to Pier 4. There it will stay as a reminder to all who care to visit of what happened December 7th, 47 years ago. At the Inner Harbor, Brad Bell, Channel 2 News.
Oh, hear us when we cry.
The thing that mostly sticks in my mind is how close I came to getting killed.
On the sea.
and I helped afterwards pulling people out of the burning oil there that were off the ships.
Very vivid in my mind, and toward the end of the day, one of loneliness.
A Baltimore City Police helicopter hovers above the U.S. Coast Guard cutter Tawny. Out twirls a wreath, floating all the way to the inner harbor waters below to remember those who lost their lives at Pearl Harbor. Valiant soldiers who lived to tell the tale of 1941 join in a ceremony on board the only vessel still afloat from the Japanese attack.
God bless America, my home sweet home.
While the Americans won the war against the Japanese militarily in the 40s, it was made mention today that the United States may be losing the war economically in the 90s. As each will tell you, December 7th, 1941 was the worst day in their lives.
But we pulled ourselves together and won the damn war.
Many of these men still carry bitter memories toward their one-time enemy, the Japanese. They witnessed the attack, and now they warn the government to stay alert once again.
Well, they always said that they would take over. And I guess if they can't do it militarily, I guess they'd do it economically, or try to.
They now look with encouragement to Eastern Europe, knowing that 48 years later, their efforts are still being rewarded by a new generation of people who love freedom as much as those who died at Pearl Harbor. Jamie Costello, Channel 2 News.
Imagine there's no heaven. It's easy if you try.
I'm sure most of the people now know exactly why we're playing all the Beatles music this morning, but if you don't, John Lennon last night was shot in front of his apartment 5 times by what they term a screwball, and died, according to the doctors, probably immediately afterwards.
We used to ask, will the Beatles ever get back together again? Now we know the answer.
We'd like to get your thoughts, too, if you'd like to give us a call. 481-0165 is the number.
He was a giant in just the industry. He knew when to play and, you know, where to play it and what kind of sound to make come out. And it was incredible.
If we believe anything of the music that John Lennon has written, that our hearts should go out to Yoko Ono and his son Sean right now, and that we should let John go with love, because that's what he gave all of us.
Say yes, I say no, you say stop.
I just feel right now that a part of me is gone.
Penny Lane, there is a bar for showing photographs.
I grew up with him. I loved him. I loved all his music. I remember the thrill of seeing him on the first time Ed Sullivan show when I was just a kid. Just went nuts.
I was surprised. I was upsetting. You know, it's a loss to the music world that he died.
I was really shocked. I mean, he just put out a new album, you know, and I was going to go buy it, and you know, and I was even late for school this morning because I was listening to the news and the radio and everything.
I really think it's a sad commentary on the times today that somebody can be that talented and then have to be in fear. Just do you know what I mean? I really think it's just tragic.
If he had died from drugs or some other source like most rock and roll musicians do, it would have been a little different. But the fact that somebody just, you know, went out and shot him.
The most sought-after recording, John Lennon's latest album, Double Fantasy, recorded with his wife Yoko Ono and released only last month. While most Lennon fans were buying his records out of sentiment, the future monetary value, especially of the latest album release, was the reason for some of the purchases. But one Baltimore record dealer says there is no way to tell how valuable a Lennon record will be in the future, comparing, say, for example, the money commanded by an Elvis recording.
At this point in time, there's really no way to say, unless they were to change cover artwork, whatever. There would really be no difference in cost or price or monetary value of that particular record now or 2 years from now.
Comparing again Lennon with Elvis, Meager says Elvis Presley may have touched the lives of more people, but the reaction to Lennon's death is perhaps as great, he says, as when the king of rock and roll died. One of the reasons, he says, the timing of Lennon's death.
The economy, you know, the way things are right now in the world. Everybody's edgy. Everybody's looking for something to hold on to. And for some people, for a lot of people, I'm sure that that's John Lennon right now.
He was a giant in the recording industry. In this country, only Elvis Presley and his fellow Beatle Paul McCartney had outsold him. But the week prior to his brutal murder in New York, his album, Double Fantasy, was selling just 2,000 to 3,000 copies per week in the Baltimore, Washington market. From the day after his death, for the next 3 weeks, those sales jumped to 20,000 per week. Unbelievable sales, even for a giant like Lennon.
Took off beyond the point of even a bestseller. It was something that just everybody felt that they had to own. It was the kind of thing that was dealing both with nostalgia and as a period piece. So, you know, the two combined, even though they're close anyway, it was kind of very intense. People came in and just bought it, went out, and I guess went home and played it many times.
Shapiro says that at his Cold Spring Lane store, that lasted for 3 more months. Now, even on the anniversary of his death, Lennon's sales are about average. But about average is still much better than most other recent releases by other groups and individual performers. Kurt Anderson, Channel 2 News Scene.
WCAO Baltimore. Earlier this week, Yoko Ono had requested, after the tragic death of John Lennon, that the world observe a 10-minute period of silence Sunday afternoon at 2 p.m. Eastern Time. And of course, we at WCAO will also comply, go along with her wishes, a period of silence, and we will follow it with the Lennon legacy. So let's join together now in silence for 30 seconds.
Despite the bad weather, or maybe because of it, there was a huge crowd at the Annapolis Mall. The merchants there are reporting their best year ever. Big crowds, lots of buying, lots of money being spent.
We're having a great season. I think because the economy is better this year, customers are more comfortable with purchasing more items and spending more dollars at Christmas.
That also seems to be the feeling among the shoppers.
Well, I think everything is more expensive, so you do have to look for what's on sale. But everything's going along smoothly. I think I'm well ahead of the game, have very little left to look for, and gonna wrap it up in a day or so.
What would Larry like to have for Christmas? Hungry Hippo game. And what would you like to have for Christmas?
G.I. Joe.
G.I. Joe. And what else?
He-Man.
He-Man. Isn't that a nice toy, He-Man?
Let's see if I can try to remember one.
Okay, you try to remember, okay? Was it a car or a truck or some G-Men?
I made up a couple things.
Only 18 shopping days left till Christmas, and the people here say the crowds are just going to keep getting bigger and bigger, so I'm going to take care of my business now. I would like a Mercedes.
A Mercedes.
A videotape recorder.
Videotape recorder.
And maybe a calculator. You know what they say?
Calculator.
You know what they say? The only difference between men and boys is that men's toys are more expensive.
That's true. That's true. You got a nice list, you know.
Lou Davis, News Scene 2 at the North Pole.
This is a story meant to amuse, about an auction that made the 11 o'clock news. This one I care to mention because it's a topic of national attention.
Sold $110 to the lady right up here.
Mothers and fathers with egos and ids pushing and shoving to make their bids for status rag dolls called Cabbage Patch Kids.
If these things are auctioned off, if people are willing to pay that amount of money for things like this towards a worthy cause, then it is worth it, yeah. Yeah, but not just, blech, no, I mean, this thing's hideous.
The dolls have been in such demand, they created a toy production jam. Moms and dads who want to be nice are forced to pay a premium price. Chubby cheeks, no hair or chin, but the money keeps rolling in. bundles of cotton, stitches and tucks, bringing as much as $400.
We named her Charity Bowag Bowling. Bowling was my granddaughter's last name.
That brought this assessment from City Comptroller Hyman Pressman.
Some of these beautiful dolls that we have here today, I'm talking about the real dolls here, they're out of this world.
So 20 little girls will not be alone, and maybe a few animals will find a new home. Happy are they with the money they raised, taking advantage of this Christmas craze. In Southwest Baltimore, Les Coleman, News Scene 2.
We're going to be reading the story, The 12 Days of Christmas, or what Christmas could be like at the White Bowden House if my husband is paying attention. The 12 Days of Christmas. The first day of Christmas, my true love sent to me, what? A partridge in a pear tree.
But the group gathered around me today, the City College Choir, knew the story of the 12 Days of Christmas better than I, and in better voice.
4 hummingbirds, 3 French hens, 2 turtle doves, and a partridge in a pear tree.
The end. I'm Susan White Bowden on the scene at the Baltimore Convention Center. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen.
All right, how many of those stories do you remember, huh? Right? For 75 years, WMAR has brought those news stories right into your home. From film to video to tiny digital cards, over the air, cable, satellite, now here we are streaming. And we'll keep moving forward and remember to look back at the stories and the moments that made us all Maryland. We hope you've enjoyed this episode of the WMAR Vault. We will see you next time. Hey, it's Jamie Costello. If you just enjoyed this episode of The Vault, you can check out more episodes by clicking on this box down here. And while you're at it, go ahead and hit that circle, and that'll subscribe you to WMAR2 News for great content every single day.